Hey, Marijuana Nation, just a quick programming note for this week. You might remember me taking off from work last Wednesday to go snowboarding with my kids. Unfortunately, I'm also going to be unable to produce a show on Wednesday this week, though for a less fun reason than snowboarding. I just found out that my teenage daughter, who I rely on for my Wednesday childcare with my 4-year-old, which allows me to crank out a show, is the subject of a COVID close contact, so she's under quarantine for 2 weeks. Thankfully, she's not showing any symptoms. She just needs to stay locked down for 2 weeks. So I will be publishing on Friday this week. And as I always mention when talking about our publishing schedule, my intention is to get back to publishing Tuesday through Friday, 4 days per week, just as soon as the coronavirus allows. Until then, we're publishing on Tuesdays and Fridays for sure, and usually on Wednesdays, but just not this week. So it is what it is. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is sponsored by our friends over at Curaleaf, a leading vertically integrated medical and wellness cannabis operator active in 24 states with 97 local dispensaries, 22 cultivation sites, and 30 processing facilities, serving up more than 350,000 registered patients and customers. Swing over to curaleaf.com today, spelled Curaleaf, to learn more about all the good things done over at Curaleaf and for more about their support of the Veterans Cannabis Project, which works to expand medical marijuana access for military veteran patients. That's curaleaf.com and vetscp.org. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, February 9th, 2021, and you're tuned in to episode 1019 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead off the week's news with a not great headline out of South Dakota, where a judge yesterday struck down a ballot measure to legalize adult use marijuana that was passed by voters in November. You might remember me reporting on this one in the past, with 2 anti-democratic law enforcement officers suing the state over the voter initiative that made adult use cannabis legal, claiming it ran afoul of state law governing how many issues a ballot measure can address. Yesterday, Circuit Judge Christina Klinger ruled on that lawsuit, which was originally designed and supported by Republican Governor Kristi Noem, and ordered the ballot measure overturned, throwing out the will of the 54% of South Dakota voters who approved of it. South Dakota activists say they will appeal, so we'll keep an eye on this storyline. On Friday, lawmakers in Virginia passed 2 companion bills to legalize adult use marijuana. The 2 bills were facing a deadline of Friday to be passed out of the state Senate and House of Delegates for crossover deliberation, and both thankfully made it out with majority votes in both chambers. Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam is on the books as being in favor of adult use legalization, so it's expected that the bill will eventually pass. Right now, the 2 bills will need to be merged into one via bicameral conference committee, as they picked up enough differences in their respective chambers. We'll need to see what emerges as that process happens, but right now it looks like Virginia's adult use program will be built around a tax rate of 21% on top of the state's standard 6% sales tax, with another 3% of local taxes possible. Doing the math, that's up to 30%. There would be social equity provisions for licensing, and home grow would likely be allowed, though again, we'll need to see how the actual merged legislation looks. Swing over to Marijuana Business Daily for more on this one. Our final top story in the day concerns a meeting held late last week between 3 leading Democratic senators working on a plan to legalize adult use marijuana and representatives from various drug reform organizations, including our friends over at Students for Sensible Drug Policy. The meeting of activists and industry stakeholders was held to give feedback on the legalization process to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, and Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, who you should remember for their recent announcement of plans to pass major legalization legislation this year. It's a relatively remarkable milestone for our industry and movement that the meeting even took place, and all the more so with the anticipated reforms at the federal level that should come about because of it. This is an excellent story to read in full today. Pop over to Hill Reporter for more. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Curaleaf, one of the nation's top multi-state cannabis operators with 97 local dispensaries, 22 cultivation sites, and 30 processing facilities, serving up more than 350,000 registered patients and customers. Curaleaf has grown from a company with just a handful of shops located up here in the Northeast to one of the leading companies in the world of legal cannabis in just a few short years. With shops and facilities located across the country, the chances of there being a Curaleaf shop to you to visit nearby has never been better. And did you know that Curaleaf is also a major player in the worlds of legal hemp and adult use, with Curaleaf Hemp, Select, and Grassroots all existing under its corporate umbrella? You can learn all the things you want to know about Curaleaf, including the location of the closest shop, over at curaleaf.com, with Curaleaf spelled Curaleaf. Big thanks to everyone over at Curaleaf for the support that helps us keep the news lights running. All right, time for the Blitz. On Friday, lawmakers in New Jersey state legislature gave Governor Phil Murphy a little bit of extra time to pass a bill setting up a legal adult use marijuana sales program. Friday was the previous procedural deadline by which time the governor was supposed to sign the legislation into law, but details are still being worked out for how exactly the whole thing will operate, so the new deadline has been kicked back to February 18th. Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman has announced that he is running for the Pennsylvania Senate seat that opened up after Republican Senator Pat Toomey announced his retirement back in October. You might remember the lieutenant governor for a recent story we ran here on the Daily involving the pro-cannabis flag and pro-LGBTQ flag that he put back up on his office in the state capitol after they had been ordered down by Republican lawmakers. This is big news for our industry because Fetterman is a giant supporter of legalization, besides generally being a good person. Know this storyline. We have some good news out of California, where on Friday, state officials confirmed that marijuana industry workers are eligible for the first round of coronavirus vaccines. That clears up the confusion that's been in the air for the past few weeks, as it hasn't been exactly clear how cannabis workers would be treated when it comes to vaccine prioritization. Kyle Yeager over Marijuana Moment has a good story on this one, which you should obviously know well if you are in the Golden State. As California has it now, people who work in customer-facing medical dispensaries are eligible to get vaccinated in Phase 1A, and those who are involved in more behind-the-scenes jobs like cultivation and transportation can get their vaccine in Phase 1B, the next that follows. Again, read this one in full if you're in California yourself. Returning to New Jersey for a headline, we have Governor Phil Murphy signing into law late last week a bill that greatly reduces the criminal penalties involved with possessing psychedelic mushrooms. While the bill doesn't eliminate criminal penalties entirely, which it should have, it did cut the maximum fine possible from $15,000 to $1,000 and the maximum prison sentence from 5 years to 6 months for the possession of up to an ounce of psychedelic mushrooms. So we'll take it. Now, let's keep pushing. Wisconsin's Democratic Governor Tony Evers included marijuana legalization in his 2021-23 biennial budget proposal released just on Sunday. Unfortunately, it's not likely at all that Wisconsin will see legalization this year due to Republicans controlling the state's two legislative chambers, but it's nice that it was included and helps keep the issue alive for when the GOP does not control things. Bart Shainman over at Marijuana and Business Daily has a good story up looking at the rise in the sale of cannabis concentrates, which rose more than 40% last year, according to numbers gleaned from Headset and Leaf Link. Bart's story attributes the rise, among other factors, to a growth in the overall comfort level of consumers with the process of dabbing, in addition to an overall desire to try non-flower products that also aren't vape pens. If your world touches marijuana consumer goods at all, read this story. And finally for today, our buddy Ben Adlin, a new regular on our weekly show Marijuana Today, closes things out with a story of his over Marijuana Moments, looking at how legal cannabis polls with consumers when compared to ideas like a $15 minimum wage and President Joe Biden. Running with the overall theme of most people loving cannabis, a full 61% of those polled were in favor of adult use legalization, with just 39% opposed. That compares to 54% of those who thinks that it'd be a good idea to set a $15 minimum wage, and the 57% who thinks we should rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. Pop over to Ben's story for a deeper dive into those numbers. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again on Friday with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Curaleaf, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.